Hello, most won't I will. Hope everyone's doing fantastic today. We got a bunch of questions from you guys, so I'm really excited to answer them and go over my thoughts about these questions. So let's go ahead and get started. The first question is from Ari. Ari says, "Hey Paul, sorry I missed you while I was in SoCal. A little bit angry that you didn't hit me up while you were here, Ari, but it's okay. We'll see you. We'll see you soon." Says, I started plans for another business last year. Now that I'm coming close to having time to work on it, I've noticed that since last year, someone has trademarked the name that I picked out. I'm trying to take things slow with the business and not rush into it. But at the same time, things like this now have me worried. Are there parts of starting up a business that I should jump on ASAP? Like trademark before I miss out, or wait until I have all my ducks in a row and just try again with a new name? Here's my opinion on that. I think there's things that you should get your ducks in a row, and there's things that you shouldn't, right? So I think when it comes to trademarking your name or coming up with a name, I don't think that is as critical, so I would jump on that as soon as possible. Those are the kinds of things that you can alter and you can change. If you want to start changing your name when your company is larger and you're already in revenue or you have customers, that's going to be a little bit hard, right? So from my standpoint, I would look at when you're starting a business, I would look at what parts of the business or what parts of starting up the business is easily changeable, right? So like if you don't have any customers yet, like, when I was building Identified, I went through 3 or 4 or 5 different kinds of website like names, and I've changed them all until I narrowed one down, because to the same point as you, I didn't want people starting to take the domain names, so I just bought them all and I just tried to figure it out which one that I would like. But because that's not like mission critical to the business, it's just you're trying to figure out what name and you're not really disrupting any of your customers, then I would jump on those kind of aspects of starting a business before anything else. Now, if you're trying to change a legal structure, like let's say you're trying to change, like, okay, well, I'm a sole proprietor, or I was an LLC, now I'm going to go back to a sole proprietor or whatever, or you're going to change completely the service line of your business and disrupt customers, that's a little bit different. I would really try to get your ducks in a row and really try to plan out a strategy. Again, really, to make it simple, depending on the business activity that you have, if it's going to disrupt the entire business as a whole, it's going to require more thought. That's when I would put things that I would get your ducks in a row first. However, if it's not like, if it's not critical, or it's not going to disrupt anything, just jump on it, because those kinds of things is like really trial and error. Especially a trademark, a logo, when you're developing any of those, that takes a lot of iteration, and a lot of times we won't get it right at the first time. So I would jump on in if it doesn't really disrupt anything else. So that's my advice for you on that one. Thanks again. Let me know when you're in town next time. I don't mind making, I'd love to see you. Yeah, let me know when you're back in town. Next question is Lalona. Lalona asks, "Hi, Paul. I just started a new business with classes to promote self-growth, such as mindset, setting goals, vision boards, etc. My first full class ended this week, and it was a success. Initially, it was geared towards women. However, several men have shown interest and asked questions about what I'm doing. How do I encourage and support men to attend these classes? Also, what are the ways that I can increase attendance and attract an attraction to these monthly sessions? Thank you for the suggestions. Have a blessed day. I'll be listening today." All right, let's go over the first question here. It says, how do I encourage and support men to attend these classes? Now, the first thing that I would ask is, when you started your business, you mentioned that this was geared towards women. Was it branded that way? The first thing that pops into my head are like the women-only gyms, right? When they start their business, they know that that's a target segment that they're trying to attract. So what I would ask you is, like, how did you brand it, or how did you, what was the wording? What was everything? What did you do at the very beginning of starting your business? To what audience were you trying to attract? Now, if it was absolutely geared towards women and that's how you branded it, then it's going to be a little bit of a, in my opinion, it's going to be a little bit of a turn to try to get men to go at it, right? Because like going back to that gym example, if it's a women only gym, me myself as a guy is probably not going to go there, right? So regardless of what kind of encouragement that you're going to have, it's I wouldn't go because it's obviously not what I'm looking for. So that's the one thing that I would ask. Now, if it was kind of general at the beginning, then you can start doing some work to brand it in that direction where it's like it's all inclusive. And you know, some of those things are like, you know, if you're talking about like advertising or anything like that, you know, a lot of the things that we do is, you know, photographs that we take, you know, with my website or some of the companies that I advise, when we're doing a like a careers page, we want to incorporate a diversity of different people on there, from men, women, African Americans to Asians and what have you. So we all understand that we're all inclusive, right? So that's a way that you can brand it. But again, just to really make it simple, the first thing that I heard was it's geared towards women. If it was branded that way, you might have a little bit of problems kind of shifting it over, or do you want to, right? So, you know, the one thing that I would always recommend is if it was geared to women and that's really what your focus is on, and that's what your strength and that's what your purpose and that's kind of what your passion is, stick to that, right? Because you don't want to, you cannot be all things to everybody. And once you do that, you just starts to dilute the brand. So if you really want to gear it towards women, just stay in that segment, right? But if you want to make it general, then you gotta have to brand it that way, and your messaging has to be that way as well. So hopefully that answers that question. Also, what ways can I increase attendance and attraction to these monthly sessions? You know, there's 100 different kinds of ways, especially with your business. There's Facebook advertising, Instagram advertising, influencer advertising. There's all these different things. I'm not the expert on this. I know Sean and Peter are very good at that. But when it comes to promoting this kind of business, social media is a great platform to advertise your business. You know, through Facebook ads or, you know, Instagram ads or what have you. Depending if it's a business that they attend, I'm not exactly sure if it's something that's done online or what have you. You can promote it in your local community, I guess, through advertising as well, you know, traditional print advertising, direct mail advertising. But, you know, social media is such a powerful tool now that's the direction that I would go. Okay. Thanks for that question. So let's go to the next one here. This is Megan's question. I just saw that she just popped up. So this is kind of perfect timing. I've never written a formal business plan before. What is your best advice in creating a business plan that most people might not think about, but are important, especially for investors? Also, what is your favorite new business? So also, what is your favorite new business? Okay. Thank you for being here today. I look forward to listening to your Q&A. Okay, so when I think about business plans, and the second thing that you mentioned was investors, right? So I think of those in two different ways, right? A business plan, I believe, is this is how I look at these things. But a business plan is an internal plan for the business, right? So when you develop a business plan, that's for you, your partners, your management staff, your employees, or what have you, to understand what your roadmap is and what your goals are, what your business stand for, is what's the mission statement, why you're doing the business, what kind of products that you have, how you and what are your goals, right? When you bring the investor side in it, it's a business plan, but it's also called a pitch deck, right? Because when an investor is looking at it, so it's not just the business plan itself, but it's also financials, right? When anyone invests into a company, they want to know exactly what kind of returns that they're going to have on their money and when and why, right? So that's the two differences. So as far as a business plan, I think what people tend not to do is really understand that mission statement, right? Why are you doing the business, right? There's a book by Simon Sinek. It's called Start With Why. right? And he says that people don't buy from people buy from people that know why. Why are they doing it rather than what are they doing, right? So when people start to talk about what they do, like I'm a recruiter or I'm a social media advertiser, they're telling why they're doing it, right? It's like I'm selling gasoline. When you talk about why you're doing it, what it does is it makes you a commodity-based item, right? It's because they don't understand. All they understand is what you're doing. But when you tell them why you're doing it, that's a whole different subject, right? So, so as far as that, I would say like really focus on that mission statement. Why are you doing what you're doing? Who are you trying to help? What are you trying to target? And then I would go over your culture too. This is something that I think a lot of companies and business plans fail to understand. Culture is ultra important in any kind of company, right? We were awarded best companies to work for, not because we provide great benefits or not because we give you unlimited vacation time, on your own discretion, but it's because of the culture that we built. It's what is a culture that you want to build in your company? Is it an innovative culture? Is it a family-oriented culture? Is it a collaborative culture? Those are the kinds of things, these intangible things that you really need to put into your business plan and really understand what your culture is about. So I think those are the things that are deficient in most business plans. It's something that's ultra important, right? Sometimes we focus so much on putting the hows in our business plans, we don't put the whys and the intangible things. I think you wrote something as part of my question. Sorry, part of my question must have been cut off. The second part of that was, what are your favorite marketing strategies for new business? Depending on the business, I think for a lot of business, social media is absolutely important. Nowadays, everybody's on their phone, looking at their phones they're going over social media, and we're bombarded with ads. I think one of my favorite marketing strategy is actually influencer strategy, right? So like using other influencers to promote your product or your service. And again, if you're going to target an influencer, you want to make sure that they're in line with your brand, right? So that's really, really important. But that's one of my favorite marketing strategies currently. So, okay, let's see. Let's go on to Kyle's question here. I've read a lot about culture and the interview process lately. What are your advice can you give to someone transitioning from a solo operation to having multiple sales reps? Okay, that's a really cool question. Let me answer that from a technical standpoint, right? So when you're a solo entrepreneur, all you got to think about yourself. You don't have to think about compensation from anybody else. You don't have to think about any kind of structure for anyone else. It's basically you. Once you start bringing on employees, that's a whole different, employees, 1099, independent contractors, whatever, that's a whole different ballgame. Because you have to really formulate what kind of expectation. So when I talk about a technical standpoint, if you're bringing on people from a W-2 standpoint, right? So like W-2 is an actual employee of your company. Before you do anything, if you're a solo entrepreneur, most solo entrepreneurs start out as a sole proprietorship, and then they start to move on to like an LLC or a corporation, right? So once you start bringing on employees, I would really start looking at your corporate structure, right? Because one thing that you want to do is once you start having employees, then you have an increased liability. When you have increased liability, you want to make sure that you're protecting your personal assets, right? So you have to have something in between there. So the first thing I look at is like, if you are a sole proprietor, you might want to get a freestanding entity like an LLC or a corporation before you start adding on employees. Because the one thing that you don't want to do is have a dispute or have something arise and they're coming after your personal assets, right? Which again, I mean, it's not a complete bulletproof thing, but it does add an extra layer. So that's the first thing that I would do, right? So now we're trying to get the ducks and the foundations in a row. Now, after that, you want to start understanding how you're going to payroll these people, right? Because you're not going to just start cutting checks. Start understanding what kind of payroll systems that you want. what kind of accounting system that you want. What I like to do with my accounting systems and my payroll system and it is integrate them into one. I don't have a gigantic, financial system. I use QuickBooks, and then basically I use a QuickBooks integrated payroll system on there, and timekeeping, right? So again, these are the things that we didn't do while we were solo entrepreneurs, right? So now we have to keep track of their timekeeping. Now we have to keep track of how we're going to payroll these people. Now we got to keep track of like how we're going to go through how we're going to account for all these things, right? So you have to have a pretty good accounting system and a good payroll system to make sure that you're tracking all that. So that's one thing. Then the next thing is like, okay, if you are employing them, and even if you're not employing them, what kind of insurances do you have, right? Because if you are W-2ing someone, then you have to have workers' compensation, right? You have to have general liability. And if something happens while your employee is out in the field or is doing something, or God forbid they get into the car accident, do you have auto coverage that covers their car? Do you have disability? I mean, do you have, you have to try to figure out what kind of insurances that you need to make sure that your guys are covered. Now, if your sales rep has done something inappropriate or what have you, you want to make sure that you're covered from a director's and an officer standpoint, right? Like, you have to have insurance, like something called E&O, which is errors and omissions, in case something happens where it's like, hey, you didn't tell me about this, and they come and sue you. So there's all these different kinds of things that you have to get in line once you start bringing on employees. Depending on the state, you want to look at, what they're entitled to. Like here in California, we're mandated to give, regardless if they're temp or whatever, if they're 20 hours or more, we have to give them 3 hours sick day, period, right? So you have to understand those things. So those are some of the, I can go on and on when you start bringing on employees. Another thing that you have to have is an employee handbook, right? So basically, you have to give them a handbook. They have to understand exactly what is expected, what would be the dress code, and all these different things within the handbook. You have to have them sign that, and you have to file it. All their onboarding documents need to be filed and correctly put away. So those are the things that you would need to start looking at when you're transitioning. There's a lot of things that you should get in line before you start bringing people on, right? You don't really want to learn the hard way in case there's a dispute, and then you have to bring up it goes into litigation or something like that. So those are the things that I would from a tangible standpoint, what I would do if you're transitioning into bringing on employees, right? So the next thing, so now that's all done, and I'm, I apologize if I'm getting a little long here, but the next thing that I would do is make sure that you have a way of tracking their sales reps. So you want to make sure that you have a way of training them off the bat, right? So they're coming into your company, they don't know really much. They might know about your company, they might not, but at the same time, you want to be able to duplicate yourself, and the only way that you can duplicate yourself is make sure that you have like a training program that can duplicate it, right? So you hold yourself to a standard of metrics that you need to do for your business. That needs to be transferred to them as well, right? So there needs to be a training. You need to be able to train them a step-by-step training program so you can replicate what you're doing, right? The reason why I believe you're adding multiple sales reps is because you're trying to duplicate your efforts, right? You want to scale your business, and the only way to scale your business is bring on new people. And when you bring on new people, you need to replicate yourself and your efforts, right? And the only way that you can do that is that you need to write everything that you do and all your expectations and what you know and what you've learned, and transfer that over to them through a training manual, through like field training, through making sure that they get it. And you want to go with them the entire way until you feel that you're comfortable and letting them go by themselves and talking to your customers or talking to the customers that they're building because they're representing your company, right? At the end of the day, if you don't train your employees well and they go out and really do a disservice by ruining your brand or not saying the right things or what have you, that gets really difficult for you because that is your brand. So so hopefully that answers all that entire questions from what you should do from a legal standpoint and what you should do from a company structure standpoint and what you should do after. Let's see. Moving right along. Brianna, she says, hi, Paul. I'm currently raising money for a new venture. I've set up meetings first with people I know that are interested in being a silent investor. Other than the numbers being good on my projection, what are the big factors they're looking for, as well as what things should I be really looking for in them for a good partner? I do have a detailed 5-year business plan, as well as a pitch that I've worked very hard on. Also, where would you look for the next place in finding potential silent investors after friends and family? Okay. Let me read that again. Okay, so here's the thing. It's interesting. Just this morning, I was reviewing the call I was on. I was reviewing my contract for a new for a project that I'm investing in, and I'll tell you what I'm looking for. Right, the first thing that I'm looking for in a pitch deck, or what, especially if I don't know them. Right, if I know them, that's a whole different story. What I want to know is who's, especially at the very beginning of me investing into anything, right? If it's a brand new company, a brand new project, I've never really understood it before, I want to see who the leadership is, right? What are their experience and what have they accomplished? It's just like hiring anybody. When you're starting a business, it's always the people that are starting the business, that are running the business, that are involved in the business, that's going to make the business, right? You can have the most incredible product in the world. If you have the lousiest people working for you, it's never going to make it, right? So the first thing that I want to do is, just like when I'm hiring people, and I'm going to say this to you guys, just when you're hiring, who is that person? What have they done? What have they accomplished in the past? What are their background, right? If someone's pitching me that they want to start a pharmaceutical company, and they're trying to find new drugs for the common cold, and their background is they're an auto dealer and they started automotive companies, that's not going to really jive for me, right? So if there's a disparity between your background and what you're doing now, you have to figure out other ways to overcome that. But the first thing that I'm looking for is, okay, who is that person? And generally what happens is I look at, there should be a profile of the leadership of the company, right? Who is a leader? What have they done? What have they accomplished? What is their pedigree? That's what I'm looking for. I want to know who I'm going to be dealing with. Now, if they don't have experience directly, if their past experience isn't directly lined up with what they're building or the new company, then I tend to look at what their achievements are, right? So what have they done in the past? Again, almost all of my decisions, if it's very early on in a business, I'm looking at the leadership, because that's who makes the business, right? So that's what I look for. The second thing I'm looking for is, okay, what is the need? Is there actually a need, right? So if your new business is creating new VHSs or new CDs, I'm not going to it doesn't matter how much passion you have for that. There's no need in the market for that, right? So I think what we do is sometimes we start businesses that just because we're passionate about it doesn't mean that the market's going to be receptive to it, right? Just because I really like DVDs doesn't mean there's a whole bunch of people out there that's going to feel the same way, right? So I want to know what the need is in the market, right? If you're looking at a standalone store in Nashville, Tennessee, and I want to know, okay, you have a standalone store. What's the product? Who are your competition around that area? If you do have competition around that area, have you done your research as far as how much they're making, what their revenue is? What kind of the person I'm investing in, he's walked into those stores, talked to those owners, understands how much traffic is coming out through that street because it has a storefront. So I want to know all that data, what kind of traffic is they're getting, what's the what kind of market it has, what kind of market penetration it has, what kind of market saturation it has. So I'm looking at all those variables to see if there's an actual, and the reason why I'm doing that is that I'm looking for if there's an audience, right? If there's an audience to sell the product to, right? Again, if I'm selling VHSs and I'm standing in the corner, I don't think I'm going to sell a VHS cassette or a CD no matter how much effort I put into it. I don't think I'm ever going to scale that company because there's no need. There's no market need. So that's what I'm looking for too. So I want to be presented, hey, this is the market need. Here's what it's looking for. Here's how it's growing, right? So let's say, like, you know, you had a particular store and there's like, what's that? Pyology, right? It's into, so that make your own kind of pizza. It's kind of like a Chipotle. Basically, you know, Pyology came in and they started to grow, and then they started to be copied all over the place, right? So I want to know what the growth is there, what kind of competition there are, and if there's a lot of competition, what makes you different from all that other competition? So those are, you know, that's another reason. That's another thing. So what does the leadership look like? Is there a market for it? And have you done your research for it? Because if I ask you a question, okay, who are your competitors? Who you're competing against? I want to know that you know that. And then also, I want to know what kind of revenue that they're generating. You know, and sometimes people will tell me, like, you know, I've asked that question and people have said, well, I don't know what kind of revenue that they're making because they're a private company. That's not a good enough answer for me, especially if I'm going to hand over money, right? I want to know, you need to figure out how you're going to get that information, because that information is viable for me, because this is my money that I'm putting across, right? So those are the kinds of things that I'm looking for, you know, when I'm trying to raise money. Those are the big factors that I'm looking for: the management and the and also, you know, if there's a market for it. And then what else would I suggest? You talked about a 5-year business plan. When it comes to investors, I want to, and again, this is me, I want to know the money, right? So like, another thing that I want to know is how much money did you put in, right? The thing that I think irks me the most, right, is that people come to me and they're like, hey, I have this new business plan. I'm looking for $5,000. Could you help me? My question is, like, how much did you put in, right? Because if I don't see you putting in, like, money, then why should I? So you're gonna use my money. So I have this skin in the game, but you're not gonna put skin in the game from a finance standpoint, right? So if you're not putting in your own money, sweat equity is great, right? But at the end of the day, I'm looking for, are you going to put in your money, right? How much money did you put in? How much have you invested? And what I like even more so is if you're already in revenue, because that's it. You know, personally, I've never, my company's never went out for investment. We just kind of bootstrapped the whole entire thing, right? But now that we've gotten to the size that we're in, right, we get a lot of offers for additional funding. We get a lot of offers for, like, investment. The reason why we do that is because we're in revenue and we're profitable, right? Sometimes when we're growing a business, you know, we put in our money, our effort, our sweat, our work, and, you know, we start gaining traction. However, we can't scale fast enough because we don't have enough capital, right? If I can, and I'll tell you this, if I find a business that is constricted because they don't have enough capital, I'm going to infuse it. I'm just going to put money in it because I know there's going to be a return. That's what investors are looking for, especially nowadays, right? I mean, if you ever watch Shark Tank, they always want to know what your annual sales are, and not only your annual sales, what your year-over-year sales are, and what your profitability is, right? And how much debt you're carrying. So again, those things are really, really important. I want to know, if I'm putting in money, you better be doing the same thing, because if you're not, I'm out of the game, right? And the truth of the matter is, if you believe that, and sometimes I get the question, it's like, hey, but I don't have any money to put in. Well, sorry, your business isn't going to succeed. If you can't figure out a way to create money outside of, like, you know, if you can't figure out a way how to fund your business initially, then you're not going to be able to figure out a way how to grow the business, period, right? Because that's a really big problem. That's the first thing that you do with a business. The reason why we start a business is because we want to generate cash. If you can't figure out a way to fund your business initially and to get it into a stage where, like, you know, it seems people that, like investors like myself, would even look at it, then I mean, it's just there's no point. So again, hopefully that answers your questions. But yeah, that's what I look for as an investor. And then, oh, you asked this last question. Also, where would be your next place you would look for potential silent investors and friends and family? The interesting thing is like, here's the interesting thing about that, right? Anytime you start a business, it's usually like your FNFs, the friends and family, right? So, you're doing the same thing. Then it becomes like angels and things like that. But here's the thing. If your business is doing well and it's showing results, right? And you have a little bit of notoriety versus like, hey, I got on the local like magazine, or I got, or I was featured on a podcast or whatever. People are going to start trying to find you, right? So again, like I mentioned, and this is my experience, is as we started getting notoriety, right? As we started seeing that, we hit Inc. 500 and we hit best workplaces, people start finding you and wanting to give you, either they try to hit you up and they want to buy your business, or they want to fund you. That's one way, right? That's kind of, it becomes like this weird process of osmosis that people start to try to find you. Another way is I would attend as many, and again, I'm not the best at this, because we've always bootstrapped our company. Even until now, I fund 100% of it. Networking groups. I found a lot of the places that I want to invest in within networking groups. I tend to, what I do is I collaborate and I listen to other entrepreneurs, and we're all at different maturities and stages with our business. And I ask, okay, what are you doing? And they ask me what I'm doing. And it's just a process of getting to know people, right? And I go to a lot of, I'm in Southern California, and there's a ton of like networking events all the time for entrepreneurs. I mean, there's like real estate specific, there's like tech specific. I go to a lot of those things just to meet as many people as I can, right? I think when you're starting a business, it's starting a business is a contact sport. You need to try to meet as many people as you can, especially if you want investment. So that's what I do. And with that being said, I get to meet a lot of people that are starting businesses, and they're doing really cool, innovative things that I'm interested in hearing about, right? Because you never know who you're talking to, right? Like I don't go publicly stating that I invest in businesses. I just kind of meet them, and as I meet them, if we connect, then I'll start to explore that more, right? So that's a more unstructured way. In California, I don't know where you're located, but if it's a tech company, we have there's this investment group called Tech Coast Angels that basically it's like a mini Shark Tank. It's like an incubator. You pitch your idea to them, very similar to how you would pitch to your friends and family. You pitch to them, and they'll see if it's something that they want to invest in. There's a lot of those kinds of things out there. It's just you got to kind of look for it, right? Okay, sorry. Moving right along. We're at 33 minutes, and I still got a lot of stuff here. So bear with me. Gabs, what's going on, brother? Hi, Paul. I recently hired an assistant who's doing a great job. I want to make sure he feels valued and imagines and sees a future here, because I can rely on him. What are the top 3 things that you would recommend that I do immediately to achieve this? His compensation is already more than expected, so I'm looking for softer ways. Okay. First, let me kind of say this. Compensation will never be the most important thing for somebody, right? I'm pretty sure there's a lot of us in the past, I mean, like even now, right? I was just talking to a former coworker when I was kind of at my corporate job just the other day. I don't care how much you paid me. You can pay me $2 million, $3 million a year. I'm not going back to that job ever, right? So I will say that compensation is never going to be the most important thing when you're hiring people. I just want to flat out say that, right? Because I think a lot of us start to think about, okay, when especially when we're growing the business, okay, what kind of compensation should we provide? What kind of benefits should we provide? Should we provide a ping pong table? Should we provide a vending machine? None of those things are really, really important when attracting and finding good people, right? The most important thing about any company is their culture, right? You know, like Apple Computer, think about that culture. You know, they might not pay the best. They actually work you guys to death, but their culture is so alluring. Most people, like, I think they get somewhere like 100,000 resumes a day, right? They don't even need to advertise anything. They just get so many resumes all the time banging on their door, right? So it's the culture of Apple that people are attracted to. Now, to answer your question, I just wanted to get that out of the way because I know I get that all the time, or people are asking me what kind of compensation, because it is important. You know, money at the end of the day, that's what pays our bills, but it's not the most important thing, and it's not the thing that's going to keep someone there. And I will tell you this, if you focus on compensation and compensation only and benefits only, and that's how a candidate or your future employee makes their decision to come to your company, I will guarantee you they're going to make that same decision when they find the next company that's going to pay them better, right? Because they're not bought into the company, they're bought into the compensation, right? So you become a commodity to them if you sell them only on compensation. So I just wanted to make that kind of a broad brush statement for all the entrepreneurs here on the group. But to answer your question, Gabs, you asked, I want to make them feel valued and have a future. Well, then tell them, right? There is this quote. I'm pretty sure that a lot of you have heard it. It's by Theodore Roosevelt. Is people don't care about how much you know unless they know how much you care, right? I don't think as leaders nowadays, or as business owners, and that's what we all are. We're all entrepreneurs, and some of us are solo entrepreneurs, and some of us have many employees. But at the end of the day, we're leading somebody, right? And unless our team knows how much we care, not just like I care about you finishing your work, or I care about you, hitting your deadlines, or I care about you taking your PTO and your vacation time. That's all surface stuff. You got to care as a person as a whole nowadays, and there's not enough leaders and corporations that do that, right? I just talked to someone the other day. She got a new boss, she got a new director, and basically she hasn't heard from that director for 4 months. He's been there for 4 months. He finally called an all hands meeting for that group. Now that's absurd. That's insane to me, right? I don't understand how a leader can do that and not. And I mean, that's complete disregard for the entire team. So again, what I'm trying to say here is that you want to make sure that your staff knows that you care. And how do you do that? Well, you have to spend time with them, get to know them, right? You always want to make this really professional, right? You always want to keep it above board and make sure you're not getting too friendly with them because you are the employer. But hey, tell me a little bit about your family. Tell me about what your activities are. Tell me about what you like to do, right? That's how I would first start things, because once you start understanding them and you start asking, hey, I remember that your kid had a basketball game or a football game. Those kinds, it sounds trivial, but those kinds of little things are so important, right? So it's like, I'll talk to my sales guys now, right? And I'll give you one example, and it's one of my girls had one of my sales reps, she's a female, she did $120,000 in commission this month, right? $120,000 in commission this month. And she was struggling for a few months before that. And basically I had a conversation with her. And I pointed out the fact that, Emma, and I pointed out the fact that, hey, you started out with my company because you wanted to fund your daughter's college, all of it, without asking your ex-husband for any kind of help, right? That was her why. I understood. I understood what that why was. So the reason why I did that is because I cared about her growth. I cared about why she's working for me. I cared about what her goals are outside of the company. So that's the first thing that I would recommend anything to do. I know as we get bigger, we can't start talking to every single person, and that's completely fine. But you have to develop a culture. If you really want to be successful, you have to develop a culture You have to develop a culture that cares about their people, right? And it's not about the benefits. You truly care about the well-being of your people, right? I don't understand why people start businesses and they don't care about the people that are actually helping them achieve their dream, right? We start businesses because we want to achieve our dreams, but then we don't care about the people that are helping us achieve their dreams. Those are the number one. Those are the number one people that you should care about. Again, number one, start with caring about your person. Start caring about your people, right? And start getting to know them. That's number one, right? Because automatically they're going to feel valued because they feel that you care. Now, once you get that trust, right, that trust develops after they know that you care and you're not just there trying to like tell them to hit their metrics or hit their goals. Once they know that you care, and it's consistent over time, right? So that's the thing. It's like you can't just do this one day and then forget about it the next day. Just like anything in life, if we're ever going to be successful in anything, you have to have consistency, right? So if you consistently care about your employees day after day after day, week after week after week, year after year after year, then it gets ingrained to them, right? That's also how you build a culture. It's consistency. Then you start making them feel valued by saying, hey, great job. You know, it doesn't take a lot to make someone feel valued, right? I think about it this way too. Like if you're in a relationship, you're in a marriage, or you're with a significant other, or what have you, a mother-daughter relationship, whatever it is. Little things like, hey, you told me that you tried out for that soccer team the other day. How'd that go, right? Just for the fact that, hey, you remember that? You actually care about me. You're a busy guy. You're the owner of this company. That goes a long way. Right? That goes a long way. And, this might be trivial from all the other questions as far as like marketing or as far as like finance, but I'm not the expert at that. I'm an expert at building people, right? So, and the only way that anyone can feel valued is you value them and you have to care about them, right? So, once you get that trust, you talk about like, the future, I would start talking to them about the future. What kind of plans do you have for this person, right? Even if it's a cashier, hey, you know what? You're doing such a great job. This is what I would pull them aside. Hey, I just wanted to pull you aside, or even better yet, take them to lunch, right? Hey, Gabs, do you have time next week? I'd love to take you out to lunch just to say thank you for all the efforts that you've been doing here, and I just get to know you better, right? Take them out to lunch and you just finally say, you know what? I just want you to know that we value you here. You've been a great addition to the team. You have really stepped up, your efforts. And I can really see, and if this is something that's in line with you, I can really see a great future for you here, and then I would ask them, so what are your long-term goals? Do you want to stay with us? Is this something that you're just doing for a paycheck right now? What would you want to do, right? So then once you start, again, you got to build that trust. And once you start talking about like, hey, what does the future look like? Start to ask them, what are you looking for? What can I do for you in my company? All right. And I remember last year we talked about this. We were going through the little mentor different tables, and I think I gave you a very similar advice: is really to care about that employee, right? Because the more you care, the more that they'll stick with you. And then compensation becomes a little bit more irrelevant, and I just can't not, I don't know how much I can hammer it home that, you got to care about these people, right? That's my thing. So anyway, moving right along. I know this thing's getting pretty long here. Keisha, she says, hi, Paul, kudos on all your accomplishments. Sorry for your loss. I only saw the beginning of your video. My husband and I founded an inspirational brand primarily to strengthen the mindset of mindset of entrepreneurial spirit who have yet to believe in themselves enough to take the leap. It is a product based on e-commerce company making a splash with some local brick and mortars. Okay, so she asked 5 different questions here. Actually, she's asking me something else. Hold on really quick. Hey, Paul, I love the way you expounded on your answers. Very practical and educational. Since time is running out, feel free to pick one of my questions and be most beneficial to the group. Okay, let's see. No, that's fine. I'll answer your questions. It's all good. Number one, you've come very far in a short amount of time. To what do you contribute to expedited success? Again, it's the accomplishments and the awards came rapidly, right? But it was really about 15 years of work. So, before I started the business, it's interesting because I started the business in 2012, right? It was called a different name, and I was doing it part-time while I was working my full-time job. In 2014 is actually when I launched it. But prior to 2012, I started recruiting in the recruiting industry in 2005, I believe. So even before I started my the company in 2012, I had those 7 years of the recruiting background, right? So I was recruiting for about 7 years before I started a part-time gig, and then I was recruiting for I was doing that part-time gig for another 2 years before I even started the business solely. And the reason why I'm saying that is because a lot of what I've learned within a corporation and making those connections and making those relationships is really what expedited my success later on, right? Because again, just like your employees, your clients also need to know how much you care first, right? So like I made those contacts and those relationships even prior to. So it was easy for me to call them up and say, hey, I started a business. Could you give me a shot, right? And the reason why I'm telling you that is because anytime we want to start a business, you never know where or who or what or I don't know, you never know where your business, where your next client's going to come from, who's going to help you out or what have you. So the advice here is really making sure that whoever you come in contact with, regardless if it's deliberate or if it's not, you want to make sure that you build that relationship, because you never know. You never know when you need that relationship or if you need that relationship or what have you, right? So that's the first thing that I think contributed to the expedited success is my relationships that I had with with my potential customers throughout the years of working, from a corporate standpoint and then part-time. Another one was, quite frankly, I worked my ass off. I literally worked my ass off. In 2014, that was right when my wife passed away, and I became a single dad, and I was in the garage. I worked my ass off. I was working 12-hour days, seven days a week. And what I knew better than anything else was I know that I was competing. The recruiting industry is an incredibly saturated and commoditized industry. Randstad is an $18 billion business, and I'm a speck compared to them, right? So it was hard for me. It's like, what did I need to do at that particular time to offset the fact that I'm this small guy with one person and working in the garage compared to an $18 billion behemoth? Well, all I could do at that point, because I didn't have their size or scale, was work my ass off, right? You have to work harder than anyone else when you're trying to launch a business. It's like raising a baby, right? When the baby is born, there's a lot of work that you have to be done. So you have to put in your time. I was working 12 hours, 7 days a week. I was making sure that whatever a client needed me, I was there. Like I do that today. It's 10 o'clock at night. The client replies to me. I reply back immediately, right? It's why I do that is because they get to know that I'm there for them, right? So I'm working harder than anyone else, and I'm going to provide them better customer service. I might not provide them a better service, but I'm guaranteeing you I'm going to provide them a better customer experience and a better customer service. Once I can lock that down, they're going to stay with me, right? So that's a reason why there was expedited success, in my opinion. We're interested in recruiting brand ambassadors for obvious reasons. People are busy. And they might be a good experience to our brand, but they forget to take time to say no. For those ones who take the time to give a shout out on social media, how could we make a small mention louder and spread further without coming off tooting our horn? word of mouth is gold. Toot your horn, toot it all day long. I mean, you know, when have people shout from the mountaintops about your success and have people shout to the mountaintops about your products. Don't be scared to do that. I think nowadays you have to be a little bit audacious to make sure that you get your brand and your product and your service out, right? You know, I think some of you guys, probably one of the most audacious people or like, when I say audacious, it's not a bad thing. It's just it's someone that's really, you know, loud and toots their own horn is Grant Cardone. If you guys follow him, I mean, like all day long, you know. So I wouldn't be scared to do it. I would, you know, toot your horn, show your success, have people like, you know, have people talk about, you know, your product or your brand or your service. I wouldn't be scared to do that. Number 3, 5 years ago, did you see your business where it's at currently? No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. In actuality, I didn't think I would be where I'm at today at all, right? Because I'm in a completely different space, and I'm 100% in a different direction than I thought I was going to be when I started it 5 years ago. And the reason why is I think the one thing that we, at least let me speak for me, the one thing that I know is, right, it's like my goals were different back 5 years ago, right? And my goals were different 3 years ago. 3 years ago, I wanted to build this colossal company, right? But my goals have changed. So like, I think as humans, we constantly change. And as entrepreneurs, that's what makes being an entrepreneur beautiful, right? It's because for me, entrepreneurship is being able to design your life the way you want to design it, right? If you want to build a gigantic company, build a gigantic company. If you want to build a lifestyle business where you can where you can kind of travel and hang out with your family or go to different vacations or what have you and have that kind of time, go do it, right? So my company and the business changed as I changed and my goals changed, right? Nowadays, I don't want a colossal business. I want a business that's going to fund my lifestyle, right? I don't want a lot of stress. And that's very different from before. So as we go through this journey, right? And the reason why I'm saying this is as we go through this journey, I think what is helpful is that we don't indoctrinize ourselves with one goal, right? Because we're evolving all the time. Like if I still had to adhere to the goals that I had like 3 or 4 years ago, I would be miserable right now, right? I would be still working 14 hours a day. I would still have like 50 employees and it would drive me freaking nuts. But that's not what I want anymore. So we want to make sure that we're flexible in that, right? So if your goal is later that I want to, you know, so again, is it different? Yeah, it's not the same place that I saw I was going to be at, but you know, as I evolved and as things started to change, then I started to evolve the business as well. And I think you know, we should be open to that, right? Because the one thing that you want to, the entrepreneurs they create and they design and they make things, right? And a lot of it is because they want to do it for their lifestyle. And I don't think you should be stuck on like, if you want to create a gigantic business, fantastic. If you want to drive a bunch of fancy cars, fantastic. Or if you want to make a whole bunch of money so you can, you know, buy a van and, you know, roam around the country, freaking go do it, right? That's why we do this, right? So it's not where I saw myself, but it's where I evolved, I guess, to where I'm at now. Okay. Was there ever a point where you felt that your business wasn't working? The efforts didn't match the results? If so, what did you do during those times to stay the course? Oh my gosh, it's like a daily thing. You know, it's like I don't think I think all the other mentors can say the same thing. So do we ever feel that there was a point that the business was not working? All the time. I mean, you know, it's there's a common question that people ask me. It's like, business good? And I'm like, business has never really been good. It's been, is business keeping you busy? Sorry. I'm like, yeah, it's keeping me busy. And then they say good busy, right? I'm like, well, in business, there's really not a good busy. There's always, or just solely a good busy. There's good busies and there's bad busies, and it's kind of just makes everything stable, right? So like, you know, it's, sorry about that. So I guess what I'm saying is that, yeah, there's always times where like I just simply don't feel like it's working, and like I'm trying really, really hard, and I'm putting a lot of effort out there, and it's just doesn't feel like it's working. But what keeps me going during those times is the reason why I'm doing those things, right? And like, again, 5 years ago, my why was different. Today, my why is I want to spend time with my family. I want to be able to like take hikes whenever I want with my family, or go on vacation with one of my family. And that's what keeps me in line. Again, you always have to know why you're doing something, right? We all know what we're doing. I'm a recruiter. That's what I do, right? I run a recruiting business. That's what I do. But that's not why I do it, right? And if all I have to hang on to is what I do, I'm not going to be hanging on to it that long, right? Because it doesn't mean anything to me. So I always have to focus on why I'm doing the things that I'm doing. And it's not for money, and it will never be for money. It's for the time with my family. And that's what's the most important thing to me. Those are what keeps me going through those difficult times. Why are you doing what you're doing, right? Why is it? And again, this is for almost every single question on here. Why are you doing what you're doing? If you don't know why you're doing what you're doing, and if it doesn't resonate in your heart, and it doesn't like make you like your hair stand up in the back of your neck, then that might not be a strong enough why. Because if it does, then that's what's going to keep you going the course the whole entire way. Okay. I'm going to keep on going. I'm going to push through these. Next question. Hi, Paul. Congratulations for all your achievements. Do you think hiring your childhood best friend is a good idea? No. No. I mean, that's my opinion. I do not like working with I don't like working with family. I don't like working with close friends. I think there's just too much emotion involved with that. You know, at the end of the day, you know, we're running a business and we need to accomplish tasks. If too much, you know, even with employees, if too much emotion gets in there, it sucks, quite frankly, you know. And then you spend more time trying to like deal with hurt feelings than you do with like, you know, making sure that your sales revenues are high, right? So, do I think it's a good idea? It might be a good idea when you're small, right? Because when you're small, it's like, what choices do you have, right? But if you do, right, and depending on what you want to do with your business, early on, would I have hired my best friend? Probably, but maybe just for like the menial task, not menial, I mean like, could you send out my invoices and things like that? Nothing to like for like any decision-making products. It's hard. I'll just leave it at that. I don't like it. Let's see, Lisa. Paul, I provide social media advertising services to companies, recruiting caregivers in senior care, nannies, homekeepers. How do you develop a strong employer brand on Facebook and Insta? When a candidate has not heard of the company, what message breaks through the noise? Okay, that's a good question. So you're doing these services to the employer for the recruiting companies or for the companies. One, branding is really, really important when you're advertising a company, right? I think we kind of forget that because, like, you know, a lot of people talk about like, hey, what's the best way to market, or what's the best way to advertise your company, right? Which are the how-tos, right? It's like I mentioned earlier, Facebook ads, Instagram ads. I mean, you know, those kinds of. So that's how-to. But in order to develop a really good marketing or advertising strategy, the brand itself must be solid, right? So like, you know, there was a question asked a little while ago. It was like, you know, my company's geared towards women, right? So if it's branded and it's geared towards women, right, you need to utilize that brand and what you guys stand for, and then put that into your advertising, right? So the first thing that you do, if you're developing marketing strategies for companies, you have to understand their brand, right? Because they go hand in hand. What's their brand? What do they do? What do they stand for? How do they deliver their product? You have to get in there with them and understand what their brand is, right? And then from that particular point, right, you got to take what you've learned from that company and really develop a clear strategy on how you're going to produce results for them. That's really important, right? How are you going to go about advertising? What you're going to do about putting their information out there, and you want to make sure that you get good, copywriting as well, right? So the messaging has to be important, because the messaging that you put out into advertising, regardless if it's social media, if it's print, it's digital, has to be in line with that brand that you're you're representing. So. And then I think the last suggestion is, like, you want to make sure that you understand you're targeting the right people. There's nothing more frustrating than getting the wrong ads. Like, it's like, why the hell are these things keep popping up, right? So I think you want to make sure that you hit the right target audience after that. All right. Let's see. Shelly is the last question here. Thanks for hanging in with me. I know this has been an hour here. Hi, Paul. First of all, congratulations. Second, what are your top 5 tips of attracting talent? Third, how do you go about filling positions in an industry that requires particular licenses and certificates? I'm having a heck of a time trying to find qualified technicians. Shelly, thank you for the congratulations. The 5 tips of attracting talent is, one, again, I can't say this enough. This kind of probably answers the right question. You want to make sure that you understand the culture of your company and you brand it correctly, right? Because once you brand that correctly, then you can put words to it and you can push that out. So you want to, when you're doing advertising, as far as like, trying to attract talent, you want to make sure that you are presenting what your company does, what they offer, why you're doing it, right? And then you want to make sure that you describe the culture of your company and what your company has to offer any potential people that are coming aboard. So that's the first thing. You asked something about how to find people that require particular licenses. Here's my suggestion for you. Depending on the licenses, right? We do a lot of recruitment of, my guys started a division kind of on their own here, recruiting veterinarians, interestingly enough. And what we do is what they've been doing is they've been, veterinarians, they require a lot of education. So what you can do is go to these, depending on what it is, we go to like the schools that are producing the veterinarians. So like UC Davis here in California is one of the largest veterinary schools in the country. And what we do is we contact their department, their veterinary school, and we go in there and we ask if we can teach these veterinarians how to start applying for jobs, or we can collaborate with them to make sure that they can find a job right after college, right? Because that's really important. So, if someone has a particular licenses that they required, generally they have to go through training on that. I would call the trade school or whoever's training them, and I would get the information on, hey, here's I have an opportunity and I'm looking for skilled personnel, and I know your school handles that. Do you have a list of people that I might be able to call, or could I present at your school, or could I advertise at your school, or could we do some kind of collaboration? That's what I would do. A lot of industries that require licenses also have trade associations, right? Like we have SHRM, which is a human resource organization. I would go join as many organizations that have that particular license that you need, or that particular skill set that you need, as possible, right? I'd go to those things because that's where that's where the trade people go. That's where they congregate to learn more, and then you can start offering people there. So offering your that's where you can start finding talent there. So that's what I would do for the particular licenses and certifications, is go to the schools that issue those things and start collaborating with them. I think that's really, really important. All right. So with that, for the sake of time, I know I took a lot of time here. Hopefully this was beneficial to you guys. I answered the questions. How I answered the questions was valuable to you, and you can take something away from that. Other than that, yeah. Have a fantastic weekend, and we'll talk to you soon. If you have any other additional questions, feel free to drop them onto my onto the event page, and I can just answer them right there on the page. All right, guys. Well, I really appreciate your time. Again, I did want to say also, I know Sean posted that thing about my Forbes thing, and there was just an overwhelming like response of congratulations and stuff like that. That means a lot to me. It's very humbling that I got all your congratulations. So I do want to say thank you, and I'm humbled on this end. So again, have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.